And then if their boss, even if they get the time during working hours to study, oh no, I need to do that learning thing again. Oh no.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Edtech podcast and this series episode of the Voctech podcast Learning Continued, which seeks to explore the intersection of adult learning and tech. My name is Sophie Bailey and you are very welcome. And you can follow online at #Voctech podcast and at podcast Edtech and at Ufi Trust on Twitter. A big shout out to Ufi Voctech Trust and Ufi Ventures for supporting this new series and vocational skills development in the UK through their investments and grants in vocational technology. The Ufi Voctech Seed Fund is open from the 21st of January to the 13th of February 2020. So, what do you need to know? Well, there is between £15,000 and £50,000 available for innovative projects that use digital tech to help people improve the skills they need for work across the UK. The project duration can be anywhere from 3 to 12 months. And there are supporting workshops and webinars to guide your applications happening now. And finally, applications for the seed grants are open on the 21st of January, as I mentioned, and close on the 13th of February at 5 p.m. So get prepping. For all the details, go to ufi.co.uk, ufi-seed-guidelines. So, welcome back and welcome to a new year of episodes about vocational learning technology and everything that is shaping the future of work and skills development. I hope you're feeling energised and over the culture shock of being back at work. I've been playing catch up this week after preparing and presenting in front of a demanding crowd of 8 and 11-year-olds at a local primary school. I spoke to them all about the world of podcasting and why the digital knowledge economy is a sector they might want to find out more about. All was naturally communicated through the age-appropriate medium of Fortnite and Ryan's toys. Anyway, this week's episode throws back to our live recording at Dare to Learn 2019 in Helsinki, Finland, recorded during the same week as Hell We Can, an event on boosting skills and continuous learning in Europe. With a panel of adult education and corporate training providers, teachers and ecosystem supporters, we dig into some of the following questions. Whose responsibility is upskilling workers? What is big tech doing to fund upskilling programs? And we talk about some specific Google announcements. Are learning economics fit for purpose in corporate learning? And what investment opportunities in corporate training are worth taking a look at? Don't forget, for all the show notes, it's theedtechpodcast.com. And without further ado, let's listen in.
You're really like the best audience I've ever had. You guys are so responsive and into everything, so I love that. So the next thing is the live recording of the Edtech podcast, hosted by Sophie Bailey. So please welcome on stage, Sophie Bailey.
Okay, well, welcome everyone to this live recording of the Edtech podcast. I'm absolutely delighted to be here at Dare to Learn and in the beautiful Helsinki. And for those of you who don't know about the Edtech podcast, we've been going about 3 years. And our mission is to improve the dialogue between ed and tech for better innovation and impact. And previously, we've pretty much covered everything from early years, K-12, higher education, and so on. But our latest series on the podcast is about vocational education, adult education, corporate training, future of work, and how that intersects with technology. So that's why I'm here today. We're going to record with some guests that work both in vocational education, in sort of technology platforms in this space, and find out a little bit more to share both with the audience here, but also those listening in from 145 countries around the world. So I'd like to now invite my guests on to the stage, and then we'll get started. Okay, so welcome everyone. rather than me do a terrible pronunciation job straight off, what I'm going to do is hand over to my guests to just give a little 2-minute introduction to who they are and what they do in this space. So let's kick off and we'll go around this way. So Antti, if you'd like to start.
Good morning, everyone. Antti Korhonen, heading XEDU, the Education Business Accelerator. We are now the biggest Edtech accelerator in Europe. We started our 8th cohort just this week, having accelerated approximately 70 companies at the end of this year, who have now raised more than 20 million euros in risk capital and are making an impact for better world.
My name is Janne Hietala. I'm from Valamis, one of the entrepreneurs at Valamis and Chief Visionary Officer. Valamis is a learning platform for large corporations. We work in corporate learning space. We combine UX, design thinking, learning science within the platform, how we work with our clients. One of our sort of commercial strategy is to work with the best organization in the world, and that helps us to co-develop the product as well. So we've had a really interesting years in terms of growth and what kind of organization we've had a chance to work with.
Okay, fantastic. And we'll return to Jenny there.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm a teacher in a vocational school in Omnia in Espoo. I teach societal skills and working life skills, as well as AI and moralities. And also we have emotional skills.
Okay, fantastic. And finally, Reidar.
Yes, good to be here. I'm here instead of our CEO and founder Arto Tenhonen. I've been working as an educator, as it happens, for 35 years, this September, actually. It's been really interesting to see how things have been evolving and how we are actually now exporting our educational and pedagogical know-how to all over the world. I've been following it, partially been involved in it, but now, as of 5 weeks ago, I joined Soprano PLC, the leading private training company here in the Nordics. My main job is to be the executive director in charge of communications and corporate social responsibility. But as it happens, already during the first few weeks, I was also asked to do training, so I've been very happy to be in front of audiences, helping them learn and understand new things. That's my passion. And we're here really to find people to collaborate with, not only in Finland, as we already have, but increasingly all over the world, because we deliver trainings to tens of countries. Last year there were more than almost 23,000 individuals all over the world who took part in our trainings face-to-face and online.
Perfect. And I feel like I should congratulate you on 35 years as an educator. It's almost like, when you get to that duration in marriage, and it requires
Makes me sound old, but I'm trying to say it with pride.
So, first question to our panelists, I suppose, is who's responsible for adult education and upskilling? Is it the state? Is it the individual? Is it private companies? What's the kind of mix that you're seeing and that's being successful from where you're standing? So, who would like to kick off?
Well, I'm happy to say that I think it's mostly up to the individual, definitely. The resources are there. The courses are there. There are training companies, there are courses running all the time. You can go online at any point. So without being too meta here, I think it's important to educate people about the importance of education, of lifelong learning, which is one of the things that we're really emphasizing, lifelong learning for working professionals. I think a good motto is that life equals fun. And you can get that from if you think about life equaling learning, it means that something's happening in your brain, you're evolving all the time, you're enjoying it. And if then learning equals fun, in other words, you really love it, then you get that life equals fun. Instilling this into people, I think, is very important. And that's, of course, where the government has a role. And that's where I think that's their touch point, where they help people understand this, as well as all of us who are in this room.
That'd be interesting. I mean, I think in terms of funding as well, so certainly back home, it's kind of well advertised that the further education sector is kind of lacking in the funding side of things. So I suppose education onus on the individual requires that individual to have the financial capabilities to kind of jump in. Any other thoughts on that?
Well, maybe if we look at the corporate learning space, especially or people currently working, there's research that shows that they have less and less time for learning. Throughout digital tools, they're getting more and more interrupted, so they have a sort of attention span of 4 minutes before you get interrupted by a digital device or communication tool within the workplace. This is a big challenge, and obviously, like when we put the responsibility for individual to learn, but if they don't have time or sort of feasible economic mean to learn during their work, it's really difficult to do that. So they will be stretching their personal life to be able to learn on their own time. And if we look at the sort of larger picture, what's happening in Europe and in the world as well, and I did research for a white paper that we published for digital transformation of the workforce. Currently, it's on individual, definitely, and companies are looking to they're firing from the other side of the organization and hiring from the other side. So it's sort of responsibility for the people to do that. But the numbers are going up so much of how large amount of people need to be reskilled that either the companies will take the responsibility from the CSR side, or the governments will have to step in to motivate the companies from the taxation or other aspects to make sure that they do their responsibility of retraining the people. I think we start to see early movement in this area, but everything's sort of 5 to 10 years ahead in terms of the full size of the challenge.
And it's interesting because I know that we spoke before about learning economics. I know you spoke about that today as well earlier on, but recently I think Amazon announced they were spending $700 million US dollars on retraining a third of their workforce. Yeah. And this isn't necessarily like an altruistic act. It's actually, being able to get that many people back into the workforce or into the workforce for the first time in the skills areas they need isn't going to happen through traditional mechanisms in the time needed as well. So,
well, I think that's definitely a big problem for companies, and I've heard this in different studies and settings that especially the CEO, the highest level in large organizations, don't see reskilling as economically viable option. So they don't see that as a possible. And when we sort of drill down from there, companies don't have understanding how to make learning investments or how to calculate learning investment. And that was what I was talking earlier in my presentation. Quite simple ways to do that. That's not taught in business schools. That's not taught in executive education. I was 2 years at London Business School and really poked the different professors of economics and leadership. That doesn't exist currently. And I think in order to solve this larger problem, first of all, we have to have basic ways to understand what is a good, solid learning investment, how much should we invest, instead of falling back into this is a cost, we need to decrease it as an expense. And then when you understand it, we can optimize it, and then people will have that sort of economic capability during their work life to do this.
I think this is a very important approach, and these things need to be addressed in companies. Another way to actually solve this is, in my mind, to actually help young people fall in love with learning in school. So partially, I have to say very bluntly here on stage that school is to blame for the situation, because young people feel relieved when they are finally done with school and finally done with studies. And then if their boss, even if they get the time during working hours to study, oh no, I need to do that learning thing again. Oh no. So as there have been increasingly discussions that learning and going to school should be fun, I think it's more important than ever in the history of humanity, because it's not about that moment, those years. It's about their entire lives. And if school destroys their interest in learning, no time or incentive makes them effective, eager learners later in life.
Yes, thank you.
This is a great juncture.
Yeah, I feel like I have to say something for this. Thank you for these companies' views. We really need it at the school. So we are, so to say, combining your thoughts in teaching and with our students, so that we actually come from the students' side, so that we are helping people to understand that, hey, you already understand, you already know a lot. So this comes straight from you. We have different skills, we know a lot. So it's actually, you can also Google that, it's in the basic, it goes to the phenomenon-based learning. So we have skills that we are already harnessing and in school, and then also we are combining the societal impact of these skills. And it's very important to take in the view of the companies.
Okay. Building on what Janne was saying about the digitalization changing the work. So yes, digitalization will be changing the work, and yes, it is up to the individual to keep up to date. How many of you actually have done the Elements of AI course? Excellent. 1% of Finns have done the Elements of AI course. And that was actually something that Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, mentioned in the news conference 1 hour ago. Then there are, in digital transformation, there are also these kind of big changes when the society needs to hop in and the corporate responsibility needs to hop on. So actually what happened in the news conference 1 hour ago was that Google said that yes, they will invest 600 million to additional data centers to Hamina. Yes, they will invest to 2 wind farms in Finland to produce 250 megawatts so that they are doing renewable energy for the whole data center. But then the third thing that he was saying was that they will invest into education programs together with the biggest Finnish trade union, SAK, on especially on those professions where the change is biggest because of the digitalization. So yes, corporates need to hop in, the society needs to hop in, but still in the effect, it is up to the individual to sign to the course or to the learning solution.
It's very interesting, and I think so. Partnership seems to be the way forward. I just wondered if among our panelists, you could kind of share some of those partnerships. And I know that you've worked with NASA, for example, and you were talking about the phenomenon-based learning and actually having some of your students go into workplaces. So if we could dig into a little bit some of your concrete partnerships and you know the learnings that you've had through those examples.
Yeah, for example, we have, it's quite new in Finland to say working life-based learning, so that we actually are going to the workplaces where the students work already. So, and then we can see those skills or the subjects and the curricula if it matches what you are already doing at the working place. So we can have some methodological skills coming from there, and we have different subjects that we can combine, for example.
And I know we spoke previously about how, you know, Edtech, the broader idea of Edtech in K-12 in schools in higher education has had to go through a sort of painful journey of actually being better at measuring the impact of learning. And I can see Olli from the Education Alliance Finland here, and a lot of that work here and both at home is about, you know, efficacy and actually measuring that. And I wondered to what extent people feel that corporate training and adult education is how it's sort of benchmarking in terms of measuring impact.
Well, I think it goes to the root problem. If first of all you don't really have the foundation of economics for the learning investments, most of the learning analytics in corporate space is thinking about how many hours of training we do and can we decrease that and what are the sort of the skills and topics that we're training. What we are doing, for example, with Valam is connecting the learning and the behaviors that happen after the learning interactions or learning experiences are done with the actual business performance. So trying to go with the help of data science directly in a way to the business performance side, looking at if you have cohorts of learners doing different kind of learning experiences or learning programs, but we look at the same outcome in the business perspective, that what is the best way to make an impact into those sort of numbers. And that's something that we can do very much today. We have a quite large data science function working on that specifically. Mm-hmm. So learning can be very concrete and outcome-based, and especially when you translate into soft skills and behaviors, which is really important for the corporate space. You get really solid results on that. But if you just focus on learning and learning data separately from the business data, then you're just looking very small part of the big picture.
Yeah, we have continuous assessments so that actually people have their portfolios, for example, and then they come with different styles with videos or pictures, or if you like to write a lot, so you can reflect on your work, or your studies, or the subject that is in matter. Yeah, so it's not a separate place.
At Soprano, we're collaborating with a number of quite large corporations, who the employees of whom are participating in our trainings online, as I mentioned, and we're continuous assessment is really, really important to get the kind of proper feedback loop to work there, so that we can provide them exactly what they need and continuously modify the training so that their efficacy is as high as possible. We're also collaborating in our same building, happy to note, with Clanet. We are working with them on their AI-based learning platform, which is also something which clearly helps an individual to take the kind of learning path to reach optimal results. And most recently, we initiated, 2 weeks ago today, collaboration with Google. So you're happy to come downtown to the Google Digital Garage. It's the first actual physical street-level presence of Google in the Nordics. And there's a learning space there, and I encourage you warmly to come there. Not today, because there's a special event, as we heard, and security is high, so you can't get in, and not even me. But as of Monday, again, from 10 to 6 p.m. And what we're doing with them in terms of assessment and helping individuals learn, I mean, adults improving their and upgrading their skills is super rewarding, I have to say.
Return on investment in learning is one of the things where companies are getting better, and products like Valamis are helping in there. And it's very interesting when large corporations really start to look into that. So when they are having the transition, so they are starting to find that, hey, actually it may be easier for us and cheaper for us to put a person or a group of persons who are old employees to study for a year, and then when they come back reskilled, they have the tacit knowledge, the old knowledge that they had. So it can be actually a better business case for the company, instead of sacking the old people and hiring new ones and having all that disruption there, actually to put a number of people to the course for a year. And still the business case will be better 3 years down the road.
Absolutely. And when I read the study where the CEOs were saying that, like, it's not economically viable, and that really disturbed me. So from our side, we really want to push the technology and learning productivity and the learning analytics and measuring the learning impact to demonstrate that it is economically viable, and it should be economically viable. So just making true case examples like that. I wanted to jump a little bit back. You mentioned phenome-based learning, and we've applied that in online format, and actually in the NASA collaboration, we introduced them into phenome-based learning. That was one of the starting points how we got in touch with them. So I definitely love the phenome-based approach, and it works in corporate setting as well.
Very good to hear.
Yeah, and it aligned how they thought about, but they didn't have a sort of pedagogical framework.
Yeah.
But that's definitely one of the key things that we've taken from the Finnish education system and
it's also rather new for us as well in Finland. So it's very interesting to hear that you have actually already took it for your.
It's interesting.
style.
So there's a lot of talk there about technology, and I just wondered what your thoughts were on the role of technology in this space. We've talked about AI and whether the role of technology, but also the role of culture. So we talked about, whether companies are ready to actually take on learning in the workplace in a sort of serious way. So I just wondered what people's thoughts were on where they're seeing technology actually be useful in kind of adult education and workplace learning.
Maybe I can start a little bit on that. So I think there's a lot of history with learning management systems in corporate space. That's the same with education space. Traditionally, LMS has very poor Net Promoter Score. People hate to use it. It's mainly used for compliance. The content quality is really bad. There's been a lot of online MOOCs and online content providers, LinkedIn Learning or Pluralsight, creating high quality content. but then organizations have to go to different sources for their learning needs. So that's where our space and learning experience platforms is taking actually from digital marketing, digital customer experience, putting the learner into center and aggregating resources, personalizing learning, providing higher quality experience for them. But I think it's still the old sort of legacy LMS systems that's holding a lot of the corporations in the back. I wanted to also bring it up sort of my long hate relationship with Moodle. I think that's preventing, in a way, Finland from moving forward in a lot of ways. But it's very low cost. So when the thinking is that low cost mindset, but I think we have to really take something, and I'm happy to bring it forward.
It's interesting you mentioned Moodle because I spoke to someone this morning within the sort of education space, and they said, they're still getting like hundreds of emails from their students, and they should all be communicating through Moodle, but they're not. So that was just a little aside from an earlier conversation. But no bad feelings to Moodle.
Yeah, actually, absolutely, it depends on a lot of the platforms. If it helps the learners to get motivated and do their own style, if it's very narrow, sort of, it enables you to do only writing or videos or something which is not your style, then it's no good. Yeah. So we use different platforms.
Okay.
Yeah.
Technology can be a great enabler in learning. Like, for example, if you take the way how Minerva University is building its online university for maximum of 20 people, and how the people in different continents discuss and learn that way, and that's the same true in the kind of corporate environment. But it's only an enabler. It starts from building fitness for use, kind of the right pedagogical use. Last week I heard a Cisco presentation in Tallinn where their head of corporate learning was telling how they failed because they thought that everything is going to mobile device. And for some of the learning content, mobile device is not the right. So there are some things that work great in a small screen, but then if you have a big amount of data and you need to be able to comprehend stuff and work on the stuff, you don't design mobile first there. There you need to have a bigger screen. So it starts from pedagogical, that what are the kind of learning goals, and then you put technology in as an enabler there.
One really important approach or methodology, not really a technology per se, it definitely is gamification, which we are deploying increasingly. It's widely misunderstood or not understood at all. It's being used in very silly, childish ways in many cases, partially for this very reason, in education for children. But if you really understand how a human psyche works, how any one of us as a human being, how we operate and why we do what we do, we realize that how you structure it so that there are suitable small rewards with clearly set goals, etc., that's all there is to it. You gamify an experience. There's nothing silly or childish or outlandish or blingy about it. It can be very subtle when you implement in a pedagogical setting. And this is something where I see strong growth in the next few years. And the reason is simple. People are gradually understanding the kind of things that came out of my mouth. And you hear my words, but how many of you are using or have been using gamification? Okay, how many feel really comfortable with it, that it's a natural, good part of what you're doing? I rest my case, Your Honor.
Fantastic. And then, Antti, from your perspective, I mean, you're seeing, subsequent cohorts come through XEDU. I just wondered what types of companies you're seeing in this space, particularly, as opposed to schools and higher education. And what investment opportunities do you see are kind of viable as well?
Right. So AR and using AR in learning, especially in corporate environments, that's one big area where there are many companies. They are not necessarily always kind of like VC scalable, but they can bring a good living for the teams themselves. Then one very interesting area is kind of in between the kind of workforce and the employer. So there, for example, Fuso is a great example of a company that is making it easy for employers to find people with the right skills, and then to those job applicants that didn't have the right skills, it gives the possibility to learn those skills that were among those skills who were kind of chosen for the job. So that kind of brokerage space is there. We are seeing a lot of corporates that are focusing to that space. Those two examples.
So we'll go to the floor for some questions in a minute. So if you have any questions, get thinking about what those might be. In the meantime, I think most people here are also, exporting what you do. And so I just wondered if in your travels and working with different clients, whether you see a need to sort of contextualize in that culture what you're doing, and just whether you might talk around some of those changes as well.
Yeah, so we are actually exporting our trainings. One of the trainings that I've been into was the Future Entrepreneurs training to Saudi Arabia for Saudi teachers, and it's in the K-12 system. So this has been, it was quite success actually, and something to be considered in these terms is you have to be open to the people there and in different cultures, and then you really should be respectful over other views and cultures as well. So this is something that we started in, and then we added some skills, know-how in the portfolio mode. Yeah, this is one of the examples. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think one example that we operate, for example, in Germany, we have the office there, is data protection aspect and how we're able to use data. And they're very, very careful of how the data can and should be used in terms of going towards at all in the measuring employee performance, for example, or making a comparison. That's not allowed. At the same time, that's sort of restricting sort of innovation, what we can do in terms of AI and algorithms. But on a general level, I think the important thing is to be very transparent how the data is used, if it's for the benefit of the employee or if it's benefit of the employer. And overall, giving the control to the employees in the future, we see as important. There comes applications, blockchain, and other things. That who gets to own sort of that massive amount of data that's being generated about your learning experiences, personal learning graphs, your knowledge and skills history, and how you're able to apply. So it's a very sensitive data. And I think when the applications arises, it's more and more going to be a discussion that how that's going to be used and who owns that.
Yes, because if you're struggling, it's not something that you necessarily want in the
I think a point that needs to be made as well is actually an encouragement or suggestion to everyone. If you intend to export education or pedagogical know-how or even going down to didactics, I think it's very useful also to, at least to some extent, import something from other countries. In our collaboration with Google right now, for instance, they have this global program called Grow with Google. So they have literally thousands of pages of materials on slide decks, etc. And we've now been collaborating with them on localizing them to Finland. And besides working in Nepal and in Mozambique with local educational authorities and experts, where we've been taking our educational materials and know-how to them, it's been very useful to work the other way around, to be at the other side of the table, so to speak. However you can and are able or willing to do this, I warmly encourage you also to work on the import side. Only then can you fully understand the dynamics of how you need to operate to really genuinely help people in other cultures.
I suppose that's a good way to think about, if for the panelists, if you could change one thing in adult education in Finland to the better, what would you like to see more of?
I think in my mind the most important thing is I don't talk about soft skills and hard skills. I understand the terminology, but at the core of it, the hardcore, most important hardcore training, or even brain training, if you will, to human beings, is and should be to help them learn to learn and enjoy that process. There's nothing more important than that. So whatever means and ways there are to enable that through gamification or separate trainings for that, etc., that's where a lot of money and energy should be put into.
Okay.
I hope there would be some more mentoring with different people from different age groups, for example. Then I would like to see that actually, if you have a PhD already, you can also go to the vocational school or take part of the curricula with you. And it actually gives you a lot of skills, for example, during becoming an entrepreneur, for example. Mm-hmm. It's a long discussion in our school, but this is something we are aiming at, really encouraging people
so better
to
sharing of skills as opposed to just learning them and using them for yourself.
Absolutely.
I think one big change that I've been talking about is directing more research resources from purely K-12 education research, like University of East Finland is a big one, doing a lot of great work. But there isn't a whole lot of research put into corporate learning or working in the workplace. And I think when you think about shift in roles, that educators are becoming coaches and mentors much more as part of the Finland-based learning and flipped classroom. It's other way around in corporates, where you have subject matter experts that should have the skills to curate knowledge into better learning content for other employees. So I think the workplace needs more teachers, but it's a different environment to teach. So that kind of sort of research and education from education research should be targeted into corporate learning side.
And in corporate level, when you are mentoring, then the ways that you are actually doing the mentoring is very crucial as well. Yeah. So you, as a mentor, you know a lot, but then you will have to actually go to you can also have to go into the boots of the learner, really. Yeah. So if it's possible, but it comes to us, individuals.
I totally believe that this could be a big export thing for Finland if we know how to do this reskilling in the workplace, applying the education background, and just be the leader in the world in this area, solve the problem.
I would like to actually import something from Singapore. They have the voucher mechanism for reskilling, where the government is paying actually for those vouchers, and if we don't have, I know that Finland is having a budget deficit, so it may be a bit tricky, but there are ways how you can start with it, and for example, if with the higher income, then you would be able to do some kind of tax breaks there, so you could deduct it from taxes, and that way you would kind of become a learning society and show way as a government also on being a learning society.
I know in the UK with the general election coming that some of the political parties are, this is on their policy list of giving individuals a kind of spending budget for their own lifelong learning. So hopefully we'll actually see it come to fruition, but I won't hold my breath. Okay, cool. So let's go to the audience. Would anyone like to ask our lovely panellists a question? And don't be shy, because I know that you must all have some questions.
Thank you. What's your taking on how to educate and teach a new workforce coming from abroad to Finland to fix our problem with our age structure, or whatever you call it in English?
I think the question was that when there's new workforce coming outside Finland to Finland.
Right, got you.
And
okay.
how to
Specifically to learn or just for other purposes? Oh, to learn, okay.
Well, learning is a good starting point. Thanks.
I would basically go with the individuals. First to start, hey, where are you coming from, your culture, what are the pros and cons that you have, what do we have, and then kind of have a mixture, or not a mixture, but try to see different views for the common interests or the common problems in our country or globally, and try to start from there, because there always comes something new that we don't already know, or the views that we haven't actually thought before. So this is something to start with. But it's a very sociological view here. But anyway, this is something to start at one point.
I would scrap first the work permit mechanism, so that everyone who comes to Finland to study and then stays in Finland immediately gets either Finnish citizenship or at least a kind of permanent to stay as long as he or she wants. And then on top of that, I would put a program like entrepreneurship program where you can then kind of boost your business. And if you look to Silicon Valley, for example, so 2/3 of the startups there are founded by actually immigrants who are coming there. So the same way in Finland, I see that the workforce opportunities and the innovation opportunities that are coming from there. So why are we so stupid that we still have the work permit policies here in Finland?
Great start. Yeah.
I can, in a way, address it from the company hiring perspective. There's a lot of competition for tech talent in Finland. It's really difficult to find a specific combination of competencies or tech stack that we would, for example, use. So in most cases, the most important aspect for us to hire to the culture. So we look at personality, if it's a good fit for the culture, and then the hard stuff we can train. So it's a big piece in terms of onboarding and for us to provide the education as part of their mentoring process and onboarding process and trainees and things like that. So if you think that we're headquartered in Joensuu, which is not a huge tech capital of the world from the employee or people perspective, if we have that capability built into the company, we're able to hire right kind of people and then train them to be the top talent in the world. So I think that kind of thinking could be applied in more companies.
And I really liked what Janne and Jenny were both saying about the kind of mentoring and mentorship that needs to be happening, everything related to that in Finland. But especially if people coming from other cultures, obviously they need to be very well taken care of, not to left too much to their own devices. And the edunation, how many are you familiar with edunation? Yeah, it's an excellent, still fairly new, young program, but they're doing really great work, and I look forward to seeing them helping people already realize some important things in their home countries, then helping them come here, not be just left alone, by being part of the kind of activities where they can be effective and eager learners. That will make a huge difference in how they learn and their willingness to stay here, which would be really, really good for us here in Finland.
So it's interesting when you mentioned not being in a central tech hub necessarily. I think I heard this week that over 30% of the UK workforce is now freelance, which I haven't verified, but someone mentioned at an event. But certainly that trend is becoming more and more. And whether it's freelance or whether it's a distributed workforce, I wondered how people are approaching, corporate training. When you're talking to adult learners, in the context of the actual workplace not necessarily being a physical location. How does that affect what you do?
Well, I think overall, learning and learning content that's within the corporate space is very valuable from recruiting and marketing perspective as well. So we've seen some companies that we work open their internal sort of repositories of learning content and use that as inbound marketing for HR, for recruiting. So I think people in the gig economy, for example, that can be very talented, they look very efficiently for learning resources available. And if companies would open more of their sort of high quality, that this is the expertise, what we have and what we can offer, and here's a little piece of culture, that's a good way to provide knowledge, valuable knowledge, and actually help to attract talent, for example, into the company. But of course, more and more companies have to work with distributed organizations and more people with outside of their organization. And if we can build better support into the education already with that people are comfortable. I think kids who play online games are very comfortable already sort of collaborating with different people over the virtual means, which is important skill for the workplace as well.
As being sort of a freelance, or if it's a freelance kind of based work, so there should be an entrepreneur mindset, of course, it comes to this. So use your imagination, go to somewhere where you see there is a need for the skills that you actually have. You don't need to have the knowledge for everything, but you just be comfortable with your own thing and you go with that. You know your skills and you go with that. And go to different companies and show your knowledge. I'm sure that there is a place for every kind of work.
There's a definite connection, and we've seen that with the NASA collaboration Epic Challenge program. If you are able to teach kids how to learn and the skills to learn, they will become more entrepreneurial. That they will show entrepreneurial traits and become entrepreneurs. So I think that's really a key aspect of the whole education, that what they should learn. And the same goes for freelancers. I think more people are more confident that I don't know everything, but I know that I can learn if required.
Yeah, that was actually a small point. We had with the as we did the Saudi Future Entrepreneurs program with Omnia Education Partnerships. It was a high success because actually 70% of the Saudi people are under 30s, and they have their government workplaces, it's fully booked. So you cannot find any job. So one pro is to start with your own company and to have this entrepreneur mindset also there in a very different culture compared to Finland. It was surprisingly for us they were very interested in this mindset.
Work is not a place. Work is not a place. Work is a process, and that process has physical and virtual and digital elements. And actually the same way, actually school is not a place. School is a service. University is not a building. University is a service. And those services will have digital elements and physical elements. Yes, it's important still to meet. And then those elements that are combining those augmented elements. And I think that the winners of the future are the ones who can combine them in a cost-effective way and still provide a good service. So thinking digital first, but not forgetting the important element of physical proximity.
Okay, so we've got 42 seconds left on the countdown clock. So very quickly, any last resources you'd like to share with our audience on this topic that have helped your way of thinking?
Use your imagination, use your courage, go where you want, and you are very good at this. This is something I say to my students every time. You are never ready. The minute when you actually think you are ready, then it's a mistake, and you are not in the society level anymore. This is something it's whether or not.
I think collaboration is absolutely key, and that's what makes me particularly glad to be in a Dare to Learn event like this and meeting with other people in the industry, because just as within the Soprano group, Tieturi, the biggest IT trainer here in Finland, is collaborating with Google. We're collaborating in Mozambique with Universidade Pedagogica, and our MIF Academy is providing trainings all over the world. None of this would be really effective or successful without multiple actors coming together and really putting their heads together and sharing knowledge. I think that's what is absolutely key, because too many people are now doing their own thing and not properly sharing or understanding what others are doing. And that will clearly be the key to success for any individual, but also our industry.
If we think about innovation in education, so more and more of the innovation is actually in all industries coming through startups. So what I would encourage every investor to do is to invest into education, because there is no better place to invest into education, because that's investment to the future of ourselves and future of our children and future of mankind.
Hear, hear.
So if you're interested more on, for example, what Valmis does in this space, what we've been working with NASA and Epic Challenge program, you can find a lot of white papers that we've authored from the Valmis.com website. So if you're interested in hearing more, come to talk to me or us or visit the website.
So without further ado, I'd like to thank our panellists, and thanks very much for coming along.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, guys. That's all for this week's episode. Thanks to all the guests, to Ufi Voctech Trust, Dare to Learn, and to all of you, of course, for listening in. And don't forget, if you've got a good idea or existing work in supporting vocational skills development in the UK, the UFI Seeds grant application process is open, and workshops and webinars to help guide you are available now. Don't forget that the Seed Fund is open from the 21st of January to the 13th of February, and all the details are at ufi.co.uk. That's all for now. Thanks for subscribing and listening. Hope to see some of you soon in London. Bye-bye.